Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Joe Rapp from Adoption, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about why Bitcoin is a better form of money. In better form of money, I'm really talking about why Bitcoin is better than the US dollar or euros or any of these currencies that we have around the world today. I'll be talking about four main points in this video. The first one is Bitcoin holds its value better than the US dollar. The second one is that Bitcoin is a frictionless currency, so that means that there's less friction when you're using it, and I'll dig into what that really means when we get there. Bitcoin is divisible, so it's more divisible than a US dollar. You can break it down further than you can break down a US dollar. And it's also programmable because it is internet money, money for the internet. Okay, let's dig into the first point though. And this is all important because I know a lot of people out there, if you're new to cryptocurrencies or really finance and economics in general, you probably don't have a good background knowledge on this stuff. Like, I went through school just like everyone else, and I never learned about economics. I never learned about finance. I never had took a banking class. And we're expected to live our lives and make money and save money, but we don't know what money is. And because we don't know what money is, it can be hard to really understand and appreciate the value of Bitcoin and why Bitcoin is a better form of money. So hopefully through this conversation today, you'll have a better understanding of what money is and why Bitcoin is a better form of money. Okay, great. So let's talk about the value of money, value in money. So today in the United States, we use the US dollar. And you might assume that your money, your dollars, will hold value over time. So you might assume that your dollars today will hold the value going a year in the future, 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future. But that isn't the case. The US dollar is considered an inflationary currency. So it's a currency that has more of it is created over time. More dollars are created year over year, day over day. And what that does is it takes away the value of your money over time. So your money today is worth more than your money 5 years from now, your money 10 years from now. This is a good example of why, people my age, we look at our grandparents or maybe our parents and we say, well, mom and dad or grandma, grandpa, when you were growing up, your money went a lot further. You were able to buy a house with less. You were able to buy a car. This is a good example of inflation and why money loses value over time, right? When I was taking one of my first finance classes, one of the first things that we were taught is time value to money. And so what that means is, and the saying is a dollar today is worth more than a dollar tomorrow. And what they mean by that is that, again, dollars lose value through inflation. They lose value over time through inflation. So what is inflation, though? Let's talk about inflation real quick. From a very high level understanding, inflation is the creation of more of the money supply. Okay, so more dollars are created. We hear about the printing press, right? Like they just printed $1 trillion. They just printed $2 trillion. What does that mean? That means that they created more money in today's world out of thin air by hitting a keystroke on a computer, and they added more money to the overall US dollars that exist. But what that does is it devalues all of the existing money. So when you look at your bank account at home and you hear that they just created, US government they created $1.9 trillion for a stimulus package, what you need to understand is that the money that you're looking at in your bank account in dollars is worth less now because they've added more money to the overall supply. This is just basic mathematics. So another example of this to paint a picture is, let's just say we're sitting in a circle with 10 people, right? And we put $10 in the middle, 10 single dollars, okay? And those $10 represent the overall money supply of the US, all the dollars in the US, right? This is very hypothetical. And we distribute $1 to each person in that circle. So now everyone has one of the $10 that exists in the overall economy, in the circle, right? And then let's say another person came out of nowhere with thin air and put another $10 in the middle. So now, from the original 10 plus the new 10, there's $20 in that circle, right? There's $20. But each of us are still holding a single dollar bill, right? So instead of having one of 10, we now have one of 20. And what that means is that our dollar that we're holding is actually worth less. It's worth less, okay? That's the basic idea of inflation, and that's what happens in the United States and many countries around the world. Now, the dollar wasn't always this way. The dollar used to be backed by gold until 1971 when Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. And the benefits about gold as a form of money that used to exist is that a central bank or a government couldn't just click a button and create more of it out of thin air. Gold has to be mined from the ground. It takes a lot of time and effort. And because more of it can't be created in large amounts, it had a low inflation curve. That means very little of it was added to the supply of gold each year. And that's why for thousands and thousands of years, gold has been a good form of money, but also a really good form of wealth preservation. Because if you save in gold, you can rely on the fact that not a lot of it's going to be created at one time. So in the future, your gold is actually going to be worth more, or it's going to hold its value. Okay, that's another video though. Okay, so we talked about inflation, got that concept down. And again, your money, and this is all controlled by governments. So the inflation in the United States that you see today, because it's not backed by gold anymore, right? The U.S. government talks to the Federal Reserve Bank. The Federal Reserve Bank is the one that creates and manages the money supply. And the U.S. government year over year says, hey, we're in debt. We have a deficit. We need $1 trillion more dollars. We need to borrow another $500 billion. And the Federal Reserve says, okay, click, and then more of it's created. All right, so your dollars lose value over time. It's important to understand that through inflation. All right. Now, what about Bitcoin? One of the things about Bitcoin that is so beneficial is that Bitcoin mimics gold, but it's even better than gold because there's really, truly a fixed supply of Bitcoin. With gold, there isn't a fixed supply. Like I told you, we have to mine it out of the ground. There's very little of it that's added to the rest of the world, right? The overall gold market year over year. So we don't have a certain amount of, until all the gold's mined out of the ground on Earth, right? And Elon Musk is talking about going to asteroids and mining gold on asteroids. That's a whole other question. But there's not a real fixed supply on gold. But with Bitcoin, there is 21 million Bitcoin, okay? There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin that will ever exist, all right? So that's a fixed supply of money, of currency. Bitcoin as money. What that means is that since there's only so much that is ever going to exist and the supply is fixed, over time, your money in Bitcoin is going to be worth more. So instead of the US dollar where our money today is worth more than our money tomorrow, with Bitcoin, our money today is worth less than our money tomorrow. And it's because of the fixed supply. That's so important for people to understand. You know, the fact that the US dollar supply is not fixed and there's a small few, the government, that controls how much of it is running in circulation at one time, that makes it way less valuable in the future, whereas Bitcoin has a fixed supply. So over time, your money grows, just like it did with gold. This is also important because of planning and saving. You know, one of the problems that we have in the world today is that people can't plan for the future because their money doesn't have value in the future. Think about it. You know, you want to plan to save for a house in 10 years. You might be a younger person looking to have children in 10, 15 years. And you want to have a reliable form of money that you can work really hard, earn money, put it in a bank account, and you would hope that that money would be worth more in the future so you can go off and do all these things. But the fact is, with the dollar today, you can't do that because it loses its value over time. But with Bitcoin, you can do that because it saves value over time, it preserves its value over time, and it's worth more in the future. That's why I also tell people when they ask me, you know, is it too late, Joe? No, it's never too late. It's anytime. It doesn't matter what the Bitcoin price is in dollars. If you're saving in Bitcoin year over year in the future going forward, you are saving and preserving and growing that wealth, that money that exists. So there's not a fixed time limit on this. This is going to be forever, for my lifetime, for my kids' lifetimes. If you want to save in a form of money that's going to be worth more in the future, Bitcoin is that money, okay? So Bitcoin has great value, better value than the dollar, better value than gold. That's the first reason why it's a better form of money. And it's important because you want your money to be worth something in the future. All right, the second one Bitcoin is a frictionless currency. All right. Now, what do I mean by frictionless currency? So let's go back to the dollar, right? Let's compare the dollar versus Bitcoin. The dollar has a lot of friction to it, right? It's managed by banks, different banks, branch banks, paper currencies all around the world. So the euro has its own laws and regulations. The dollars have their own rules and regulations. The banks control that. PayPal controls it. And if you've ever been someone that's tried to move dollars around between different banks, or maybe you've tried to send money overseas to someone, you might have noticed how much friction exists. You have to jump through a lot of hoops in order to move money, and it's very costly. If you do a Western Union payment overseas, or you do a MoneyGram payment, it costs you a few percent. Sometimes you could pay a few $100s just to send money to a loved one overseas. There's a lot of friction there to manage that money. With Bitcoin, though, it's frictionless. Since Bitcoin is money, so Bitcoin itself as money, but also as a technology, it does all the functions that banks do, but on its own. That's one of the most innovative parts of this new form of money, is that it doesn't need a banker walking in the morning and processing payments for Bank of America. It doesn't need banks talking to each other in order to send money back and forth to each other. It doesn't need Western Union talking to the bank over in the Philippines that is going to get your wire transfer. Bitcoin does all of these functions on its own as the technology. So when you send Bitcoin payments back and forth to each other, or to loved ones overseas, or you're paying for goods or services in Bitcoin, you're not interacting with any of those intermediaries. And since you don't interact with those intermediaries, it's a much more efficient process. So it's frictionless. There's no friction to use it. I can send a Bitcoin payment to someone in China right now, and they're going to receive it in minutes, and it's not going to go through any bank. It's not going to get held up at borders, and it's going to cost me less than it does to move around and manage money today. So Bitcoin is a frictionless currency. A lot of people that I know that have loved ones overseas, they've decided to switch to sending their money overseas with Bitcoin versus using the old systems like MoneyGram or Western Union for this reason, is that instead of their family members waiting a week to get the payment, them paying a few $100s in fees, and then maybe the bank over in the Philippines, for example, rejects it, and the family, they don't even get the money, right? If you used Bitcoin and you sent that payment with Bitcoin, your family member would have it in minutes. It would settle in minutes, and they could go and spend whatever they need to at that moment. And this becomes really important because how many people have, sometimes family members overseas, they rely on this money for bills and mortgages. And, it sucks when a family member has to wait 2 weeks to pay a bill, whereas instead they could say, hey, I really need some help right now. No problem. Here, I'm going to send you a Bitcoin payment. You send it, they get it in 10 minutes or so, and they can go and pay their bill right away that same day. So it's really powerful. It's frictionless. All right, divisible. The third one is that Bitcoin is divisible. So what do I mean by this? What I mean is that with the US dollar, you can only break down a dollar to a penny, right? So it gets broken down 2 decimal places to a penny. So you can only pay people in pennies. That's the most divisible you can make a dollar to pay people, right? But with Bitcoin, you can break 1 Bitcoin down 9 decimal places. It goes all the way down to 100 millionth decimal places. So that throws people off, but all you need to know is that it goes down 9 decimal places. I believe that math is correct. Yeah. So you can actually make payments of less than a penny and way less than a penny. These are called micropayments. Now, why would this be needed? Well, there's new concepts with micropayments that are being used to pay people their salaries. So imagine that instead of getting paid from your job every 2 weeks or every month, imagine you could be paid every day. Imagine you could be paid every second. The only reason that you're not able to get that kind of functionality with money today is because the US dollar is not divisible. And because it's not divisible, it's very hard to send these small amounts of transactions, very small micropayments. And that's needed in order to pay people like this, where you're getting paid every second of every day for your work. That's really big. One of my last videos that I've covered in the channel is an application called Strike. And you can go to Strike, I believe it's strike.com. Go back to my videos. I've got an update on it with Jack Mullers. But this is what they're looking to do. They're looking to use Bitcoin to pay people. They're looking to use Bitcoin so that people can get paid their salaries in Bitcoin, or you could pay people salaries in micropayments every day, every minute. So this is powerful stuff. And this being able to divide the money like this will help people like you and I, because we don't have to wait to get paid anymore. One of the problems we see today in the United States as well is that that 2-week period that you have to wait to get paid your paycheck every 2 weeks. Sometimes for some people they have bills that pop up in between those 2-week periods, and they need the money now. And it's not that they're not getting paid enough, right? But it's just that the money is not coming frequently enough for when those kind of transactions need to happen. But with Bitcoin being divisible money, it allows us to receive it at much faster intervals. So we should have more money accessible to us at faster times, and we can use that for like bills or payments or any of this kind of stuff. So divisibility is a really cool thing with Bitcoin that makes it a better form of money. All right, the fourth one now. This is also kind of futuristic now, so let's put our future hats on right now because this is also kind of big. But Bitcoin is programmable money, okay? Bitcoin is programmable. So everyone here knows that Bitcoin is money that's used online. There's no physical Bitcoins that exist. It's money for the internet, money on the internet, and you have to use it on the internet. Because it's money for the internet, and because Bitcoin isn't just a currency itself, it's a system, it's a network. It's the Bitcoin payments network, the Bitcoin network, right? That means that it can be programmed in code into a lot of different things. It can be programmed into websites. It can be programmed into Teslas now. Elon Musk is looking to do that. It can be programmed into things that we don't even know exist yet. For example, I've heard of concepts of insurance policies. So you need a short-term insurance policy for only a certain amount of time, and money doesn't really happen today because, again, your dollars are not, it's not programmable. It's not automatic. Remember I said that Bitcoin does all the functions of a bank. Your money, your dollars today still need to go through a bank. Someone needs to show up. They need to process the payment. It takes 2 days to clear. And when you have money that takes long to manage and work with like that, you can't program it into systems and in tools that need to happen now, right? Because it wouldn't settle fast enough. Your dollars wouldn't settle fast enough. So because Bitcoin is programmable, because it's code, that means that it can be integrated into all of these future use cases and things that we don't even know yet. I've heard of concepts even with like once self-driving cars are on the road one day, in order to have, so you have the lanes on a highway, right? And if self-driving cars are all driving us, the cars that want to go faster may pay a fee to the rest of the cars that exist in order to actually use that fast lane. Insurance, micropayments within insurance I've heard of. I've also heard of concepts with like hotels or, utilities. Like let's say, you show up to a hotel, you need it for one night. Instead of walking in, going to a concierge desk, talking to a person, making a payment there for your hotel room, getting the key, and then going upstairs. Imagine with Bitcoin and with the automation of hotel management, you walk into the hotel, you go into a kiosk, or you go up the elevator to a vacant hotel room, and there's a light indicator that says it's open. And then at the door, there's a keypad with a QR code and a price amount in Bitcoin for that night. So say, okay, if you want this hotel room for this night, it'll cost you 1 Bitcoin. That's a lot of money, but we're just hypothetical here. And you say, okay, I'm gonna use that. I want the hotel room for one night. And you scan that QR code. It pays the hotel the money for the room. The door unlocks for you. You now enter, and then everything functions just as it would. So these really cool concepts that come out of programmable money. But we have never lived in a world with programmable money. So a lot of these future use cases don't exist yet. And that for me is one of the most exciting parts of working with this currency and working with this technology, is that it is the future, and we can't even fathom yet what it's going to allow humans to do, what it's going to allow us to spend and save and everything. So really big, important stuff and cool things to think about and consider. So again, to summarize this video, why is Bitcoin a better form of money? It's a better form of money because first, it preserves value better than the US dollar. The US dollar loses value over time. You lose money over time when you save in dollars. Don't forget that, through inflation. With Bitcoin, you make money over time. Your money is worth more over time. All right, the second thing, Bitcoin is frictionless. It is frictionless. When you use the US dollar, there's a lot of friction. It goes between banks, it goes between governments, it gets held up, it takes weeks, it takes days to happen, it costs a lot of money. Bitcoin, we don't deal with banks, we don't deal with governments, we just send money to each other online, overseas, it gets to people real quick, and all of it's resolved, right? So it's frictionless. It's better because it's frictionless. Third thing is it's divisible. The dollar, you can only break down to 1 penny. That really restricts you on what you can do with it. With Bitcoin, you could break it down 100 million decimal places, 9 decimal places. I think it's 9. Better be 9. It should be 9. 9 decimal places. So that means that there's really cool things like micropayments that can be included, and it allows us to spend our money on smaller amounts, smaller fractions. And the fourth one is that Bitcoin is programmable money. And programmable money is important because we've never lived in a world of programmable money, and it's going to help automate a lot of the functions that we deal with today, and it's going to lead to a lot of really cool use cases in the future. So that's going to be it, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've listened to this video, I think I did it long enough here. Hopefully that gives you a better idea of what money is and why Bitcoin is a better form of money. If you want to learn more, you can go ahead and subscribe to this YouTube channel. I'll be pumping out a lot more videos on here, or you can head over to adoption.io. That's ADOBTION.io to my website. You can sign up for our email newsletter there. You can go through all of my Bitcoin tutorials, how to buy, how to sell Bitcoin wallets. And if you need a little extra help, just contact me on there, give one-on-one sessions, and I can help you get set up with a Bitcoin wallet, answer any questions that you might have. All right, everyone, it's going to be it for today, and I'll see you in the next video.